All right, some amazing news. March the 1st, put it in your calendar. We finally are going to release the beta version of the MoQuo app. If you haven't seen, I've posted it on Instagram. There's an Instagram page. Follow it there. But most importantly, watch out because on March the 1st, I'm going to release a podcast. And it is going to have all the details about what it's about, where we're going with it, why we're so excited. But the little synopsis is that it's for professional gardeners, contractors, and people who are really, really serious about their gardens. Like I said, beta version released March the 1st, and you can get your hands on it for 50% off for 6 months. I don't want to speak too much. I'll let too much out of the bag. But yes, it's only a few days away. March the 1st. Did I say March the 1st? It's on March the 1st. Anyways, let's get into this podcast with Charlie, which honestly was a lot of fun. I loved it. Anyways, I hope you enjoy it too. All right, welcome to today's episode of the Australian Lawn and Garden Podcast. We have a very special guest because we have the host, or the gardening host, I guess, of Better Homes and Gardens. I don't even know if that's your technical role. But winner of MIFGS, one of the most prevalent people in the gardening scene in Australia. But I have to say, all of that is overshadowed by the fact that this is the first guest we've ever had who's been on Dancing with the Stars. Please welcome Charlie Albone.
Thanks for the intro. Yeah, I really appreciate that one.
What is your role at Better Homes and Gardens? Because I'd said host.
I think it would be like landscaping host or landscaping presenter. Yeah, I don't know. I think Graham Ross would say he would be the gardening host, which is kind of strange because I'm more of a gardener than I am a landscaper. But there we go.
Yeah, and the stuff that we're going to get into all of it soon, but the stuff that you do, everyone brings their personality to the role that they have, and I can definitely tell that you've got different. And it's good. You've got different interests to Graham and to Jason before you, and it makes it quite special, or unique, you should say. But I wanted to start with this because the TV stuff is cool. But let's start with how you got there, because you're not from Australia, right?
No.
And the Australian climate, well, why don't you tell us where you're from? But specifically, like, how do you become one of the go-to sort of garden experts in a country that you're not even from? Where's the story start?
Yeah,
and how does it get to how does it get to a point where everyone's asking you questions and you're not even from this place?
Yeah, but all my training is from Australia, right? So I was born in Hong Kong. I lived there for 12 years. I moved back to the UK when I was 12. And when I was 18, I came out to Australia to visit some family friends. Like in Hong Kong, the expats are either English or they're Australian, right? So we came to visit some friends and I kind of fell in love with the place and said, all right, I'm going to come back and do some backpacking around here when I can get enough money. So I started to work as much as I possibly could. Like, this was 25 years ago. So I was earning £4 an hour, which is like the equivalent of $8 an hour. It's like nothing. I was painting and decorating houses during the day. I would finish my shift. I'd go 8 till like 4, and then I'd have an hour off and I'd go to the pub and I'd work through till midnight. And I did that as much as I possibly could because you're earning shit all money, so you have to put in the hours. When I was driving to the pub one night, I witnessed this car accident. So a drunk driver in a black Vauxhall Calibra cut in front of me and smashed into the gates of this house. And I went in the following day and said to the guy, like, I didn't get the number plate, but black Vauxhall Calibra is a pretty distinctive car. And I said, I know it was black Vauxhall Calibra. Sorry, I can't give you any more information. And his name was Philip Binding, the owner of the house. And he said, do you have anyone, your age who's interested in gardening? Because I need someone to help me on the weekend. And I said, look, I'm trying to go to Australia. I have like Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings free because I'm working my ass off, but I can come and do it for you. And that's kind of where my love of gardening started. My mum was always a gardener, so it was always in the background, but that's where I was a bit more hands-on. I was trying to cut stripes in a lawn with a ride-on cylinder mower. I was making leaf mold. I was pruning roses and like doing all that stuff that is quintessentially English gardening, right? So I did that and absolutely loved it. I remember the moment I kind of thought, like, landscaping's for me, or this is what I'm going to do, rather than painting, decorating, or working in a pub or anything like that. Like, I was cutting stripes in this lawn and I was doing a really terrible job of it. Like, it's those cylinder mowers, the big ride-ons are heavy and you got to try and control them. I was a weedy 18-year-old. I looked behind me and it just looked awful. Like I say, it was like Dr. Seuss. All the lines were kind of everywhere. And I got called over by Philip, and I actually thought I was going to lose my job. And he took me to this spot in the garden, and there was some snakeskin fritillaria bulbs just poking out of the lawn. And I remember seeing them for the first time, and they're kind of like a nodding bulb, really quite small, like inky purple with like literally snakeskin on the outside. It looks like snakeskin, and it was incredible. And I remember thinking, like, this is wild, and how interesting. But anyway, I ended up coming to Australia. I was working for a landscaper. I was studying over here, so I went to TAFE over here, working for a landscaper. I thought, bugger it, I'm not actually enjoying this, because there was no radio on, no talk. It was like head down, bum up type stuff, which I now understand that's how you actually make money out of a business. But I didn't enjoy it that much. Yeah. So I went out on my own, and I was doing a bit of everything. I was doing design, and then I build the gardens that I had designed, and then I'd look after them. And when I didn't have work, I'd work for other companies, just subcontracting here and there, doing a bit of everything, mainly construction stuff. And I met a girl whilst I was traveling, an Australian girl. We split up after 7 years, so long-term relationship. We're still, like, it was literally 2 or 3 days after we'd broken up, so we're still kind of talking. And I got this email from Albone, the design association, went out to everyone that said, we're casting for a show. And I thought, yeah, look, I'll give it a go. And I called her and said, I'm thinking of going on this show, or trying out for this show. And she said, look, you'll never do the video, and if you do, you'll be really shit at it. And to be honest, I probably wouldn't have put the video together if she hadn't have said that. I was living in a share house with an American guy who desperately wanted to be an actor. And I'm like, man, you're the only one of my friends who won't rip the piss out of me. Can you come and film me walking through a garden and talking about it? And like, I literally put that video in. It was back in the days when I had a picture camera, and you had 30-second clips, and then you had to take that picture camera and download it to a DVD, burn it to a DVD, and I had to take it into the office, which I took in 2 days late, mind. And they told me, we've already got somebody else for selling houses. And I was like, oh, okay. Thought nothing of it. My brother was out consoling me, if you will. And he's like, well, let's just go to Thailand for a week. And like, when you're 25, you go, yeah, sure, let's just go to Thailand for a week. So we buggered off to Thailand, spent the time doing what most English and Australians do, just drinking too much and, putting a bad name on our nationalities. And I got an email saying, look, this isn't going to work out with the person that we had in mind. Can you come and do a screen test tomorrow? And I was like, yeah, sure. I'm flying home tomorrow. I'll go straight from the airport. Did a screen test, and literally 2 days later, I was filming my first episode of Selling Houses.
Wow.
And, yeah. So
moral of the story, if you want a TV gig, go to Thailand and get really drunk. I think that's the moral.
Yeah. Or just, have a girlfriend that you just break up with, and there's some spiteful relationship going on there. Something like that.
Yeah. Get a girlfriend, date her for 7 years, break up, go to Thailand. Man, this is a 4-step, 5-step program. It couldn't possibly fail.
Yeah, it's all about timing. Life is all about timing, though, and that's just like, that story is quite long-winded, if you will, but it just shows that it's got to be the right time for stuff. I think I remember, like, do you remember the show Guerrilla Gardening?
Yeah.
And I got the email for that, like most people did, in the Design Association, and thought, that could be something I might want to try out, but never got the video. So it's kind of like the timing just worked out with Selling Houses. And luckily for me, it was popular because, TV shows come and go.
Yeah.
That went for 13 years before I moved to Better Homes and Gardens. And I kind of learned a lot doing that, which is great, because I'd only had a few years experience at that time. So, yeah.
So doing Selling Houses, we've had Dennis on the podcast, and he's actually done a couple of different ones with us over time with some of the live events we did and stuff as well. And it's interesting because it's not a full-time gig, but it's a very demanding role.
Yeah.
Right. And is that so? One of the things I'm curious about before we get into the Better Homes and Gardens side of it is how did you live and manage everything with the TV? Because did you have a job? Did you have to start your own thing? Were they very accommodating of just letting you fly out to this random place, do up a house over 3 days, fly away? How did that all work?
It was hard. So I was, like I said, working for myself, I had enough work for myself, but I was at the point where I was growing and I needed staff, and I needed staff I could trust. And at the beginning, I just didn't have it. So it was a bit of a nightmare, because when I was doing it, it was 9 months, and you'd basically be working 3 days a week, and you'd be in some remote area. So sometimes you'd be away all week because you're flying to Mount Isa, and then it's just not easy to do. But as I kind of grew, did more TV. You'd have 3 months off, and I'd build the business back up to get enough people that I could trust that when I was away. But it wasn't easy. There was a lot of times when jobs that I was doing on the side would cost me a lot of money because I wasn't there. The one thing I've realized in landscaping is, if you want to make money, you need to be in it, and you need to be 100% on it. And at times I wasn't, and I lost money that way, but I made money in other ways. So I'm lucky that I love what I do. And like, if I would lose money on a job, it wouldn't upset me too much. I'd be like, yeah, but look how cool the garden is. Like when I was younger, I didn't have the experience I needed to be building the gardens I was building. I always made right of the mistakes I made, and that was a great way to learn. And I always thought, like, most people would give this up because you're making just enough to feed yourself. It's not worth it. But I loved what I was doing, so it was fine. Like, I was happy to get that experience in that way.
Yeah. I feel like that's part of the problem with the industry, is that because people love what they do, they often will bid on jobs that are not profitable and take hits and stuff financially, and end up getting a business in a place that's not as healthy as it should be. But there's a love of it, and so it doesn't feel that bad. But it can come back to really bite you in the backside if you string a few bad jobs together, especially in landscaping.
Yeah, for sure. And I was fine doing that when it was just me living in a share house, because that's a different situation. When you've got a mortgage and car payments and kids and school and all that stuff, it becomes a different beast. And that definitely changed the way I did things, for sure.
So going from selling houses, which it's not a small show at all. It's actually a very, very popular show, but it's on pay TV. So it doesn't have the reach that free to air has. Going from that to Better Homes and Gardens, what was the story like? And also, what changed on a practical level between the two kind of, what would you call it, modes? Or
they're very different shows, right? So I did selling houses for 13 years, and when I got the call about possibly joining Better Homes and Gardens, there was things I liked about it and things I didn't like about it. I loved the fact that the majority of it's in Sydney, even though I get to travel, which meant I could spend more time with my family. I could spend more time on my business. So that was a real bonus after like what we just spoke about. So that was the main thing that really got me across. And then I met Graham Rowe, who's like my researcher now, and got on like a house on fire with him. So I thought, well, this is a great opportunity. But like selling houses is, okay, we're going to go in and tart this house up. And from a like presenting point of view, very different, because like, what's the problem? You need to tell me in one piece of camera what the problem is, how you're going to fix it, and what you're using. And that could be 30 seconds, right? So you do that. Better Homes is very much process driven, okay, and you have to slow it right down. And I found that really quite difficult to do to start with. You build, rather than in selling houses, you go, okay, we need some seating, so I'm going to put a bench over there. In Better Homes, it's like, today we're building a bench, and it's going to go for a 6-minute story, and this is how you do it. And that kind of threw me off. So when I first got into the job, I possibly wasn't myself, because it was a completely different thing. I'd done 13 years of something else. And you could tell, like, I was just like a deer in headlights and not particularly interesting to watch. And I kind of then realized that, I think you said at the beginning, like, you can start to bring your own personality into it. And I started to do that. And I mean, still, it has to be PG. So a lot of it isn't shown. But I kind of got into it that way. And now I'm kind of into a groove and enjoy it a lot more than I did when I started.
Yeah, you don't have those restrictions on independent media, but then again, you don't get as many viewers or sponsors.
Yeah.
One of the things that I find curious, I want to ask you this, because when we had Dennis on, right, one thing that happened is Dennis goes and he replaces you, and you replace Jason.
Yeah.
And we joked about this because people will they'll say to Dennis, right, that they'll go, oh, I miss Charlie. Where's Charlie? And some people would go, oh, I'm so glad Charlie's gone. Dennis is the best,
Yeah.
But it's like you've gone from selling houses, so all these people go, where's Charlie? And then Charlie goes on Better Homes and go, where's Jason? And it's almost like what you need to do is now Jason, you have this ever sort of rotating triangle. Jason joins selling houses, and then everyone's like, because you're never going to please everybody. But was it difficult at the start? Was there criticism? Was there? What was it like?
Yeah. I got hounded. Jason was a very popular character, and I'm not really in a position to talk about why he was let go out of Better Homes. But I think the majority of the people watching don't really understand it and thought that Jason got fired for unjust reasons, whatever, or got let go for unjust reasons. I don't know the ins and outs of it. All I know is people really liked Jason, and when someone new comes on, doesn't matter who it was, they were going to hate on him. And then, like I said, I was like a bit of a deer in the headlights, and it wasn't my natural thing. So it was like, why have they replaced him to start with, and why have they replaced him with this guy who's shit? So I was covering it from all angles, and that puts pressure on you, right, to do your job as a presenter. But then as soon as you realize, you're not, like you said, you're not going to please everyone. And it doesn't matter if you don't please anyone, as long as you're just happy with what you're doing. And then that kind of gave me a bit of confidence in myself to just make it a bit of my own. And then things changed for sure.
Is there ever a moment where you thought like it wasn't going to work out with Better Homes?
Not really. I just knew that it was going to be hard to get my head stuck into it. And I was like, how am I going to make this my own? Whilst trying to say you need to glue and screw this timber together, or, you know what I mean? Like you're giving information on how to lay paving. So you're giving steps, but how do you then make that your own? It's not a particularly easy thing to do unless you come up with some dumbass catchphrase. And I'm like, that's not me either. You know what I mean? Like it is a tricky one. So, but I think you just need to be comfortable in what you're doing. And the team were really good at that, making me feel comfortable. So it's been 4 years now, almost 5 years. So I'm kind of getting there. I hope.
Do you're talking about sort of censoring yourself from maybe the jokes that you would say if it was just you and Graham Rowe hanging out, and in my very small amount of filming experience, we did this thing with we did this thing called Makers Month, where we do a month of releasing episodes with brands that make tools and just go, show us all your tools. And some of these brands, they send people to watch you film, right? So some of them is just you and one brand representative. And one of them was, it was funny because Husqvarna sent a couple of techs to help us out with like stats and stuff.
Yeah.
And they were not helping their cause because we were all just blokes being silly. And it's like, here's the new extendable shaft on the, and anyways.
Those techs are really into like, and have you seen the way this screws together? No, let's look at the way this screws together. Oh, yeah. And they're like rubbing their thighs with excitement. You're like, are you serious? Like, am I supposed to be serious? It's hilarious.
Things get silly. And then I thought, like, when we were editing the Husqvarna episode, that there was a couple of jokes and it wouldn't be too bad. And then Ethan, who edited it, was like, man, I cut out like 40% of what was filmed. I was like, what? He's like, they wouldn't accept it. And then I was like, we should just make an edit of all the stupid, silly boy humor things we put in there and send that to Husqvarna privately and just go, thank us later for not including this, actually. Does it get like that with Better Homes and Gardens where you're like, man, we got to rein this in. None of this is usable.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the producer's job. They watch it and go, no, guys, you can't say that.
I find as well, like, I guess that you've got to be yourself in a version that is, what would you call it, maybe not offensive or professional PG. Is probably the better word. Yeah, PG. But
it's like you're meeting a client for the first time is what you have to be like. You know, you wouldn't go up to a new client and start swearing at them, but you're going to try and get them on side. So it's kind of like that the whole time.
Yes. Do you reckon they should do a paid version where they keep in all the funny edits?
I think that's every a great year. Way to get the show off air.
Lose all the sponsorships. All the older people who've been watching for 20 years. No, never watching it again. Oh dear. It's an interesting world getting into that form of media because like people there's a lot of diverse people who are watching that show. And this is one of the things that I wanted to get into, because one of the things I've had with hosting a podcast is you have all these different opinions, and you'll get people who will be like, lawn is the best thing ever. And you'll get people who are like, you should rip out every square centimeter of lawn and replace it with edible food. You'll get people who say, we'll get a fertilizer manufacturer on or sales or whatever, and they'll go, here's how our fertilizer works and how it's the bee's knees. And you get somebody who's like, no, we're composter. Here's how compost is so much better than fertilizer. And so even, we're talking about being stupid and obviously silly and offensive things that you definitely shouldn't put on TV. We're just being silly with that. But then there are things that will offend people that you should put on TV. Because people have an opinion. No, you shouldn't put lawn in, and so do you find yourself struggling with that side of it as well?
No, but I think like I was taught at TAFE in a plant class that don't think one plant is unusable. Like everything has a place, right? So they use the prawn plant, for example. They're like, look at it by itself and it's pretty ugly, but if you put it in a nice tropical garden, it can really complement what you've got. So when you're doing a story on Better Homes, you need to tell the story of what you're trying to get across. Maybe it's the lawn, maybe it's edibles, that kind of thing. I guess the one thing I wouldn't really enjoy talking about or don't is fake grass. I think that's like awful. Like that's my thing where I go, never put that anywhere. Apart from if you've got a big dog and it's full shade or something like that. But like I said, everything has its place. Everything has its place, right? So it can be a little bit tricky in that sense. But you're just trying to give. I always try and speak from my experience as well. Like I think everything has a place. Like there's a place for lawn, there's a place for edible stuff. But every garden is different and every gardener is different. So you're going to have different opinions. I just talk from my experience, and my experience is as a gardener. Like people ask what I do apart from it, and it's like, that's really all I do. Like on the weekends, when I've got time, I'll be in the garden gardening. That's it. So that's where I talk from.
I listened to your episode with Costa on your podcast, and one of the funniest parts of that was he said that he got a letter from the council saying his property was overgrown. And I think he said there was 7 or 8 weekends in a row where he just hadn't been there, and it took him 40 minutes to clean it up, but he took it as a badge of honor. And I'm like, I wonder, has that happened to you where you're filming so much that you come home and you're like, man, I'm supposed to be the gardening guy and look at this mess?
Well, so I used to have a property on the Central Coast. Like I had 5 acres up there that I sold at the end of last year because I just couldn't get to it, right? With life, a garden in Sydney, kids at school that now are into sport, that play sport on Saturday and Sunday, we'd only be using it on holidays, and I would have to drive up there during the week, take time out of work, drive up there during the week. I'd open the gates and I'd just look at it and it would freak me out. Like it was just overgrown. I could see it like not having the care and attention it needed. Work my ass off all day to get it to a point where I'm like, okay, this is passable now, and then have to get in the car and drive home. And I was like, well, that's not much fun anymore. So we decided to sell that place for that exact reason. I just couldn't look after it. Just didn't have the time for it, and it was such a nice garden. I could see it slowly going downhill, and you only do just enough. It doesn't get to that next level of what it has been and what it could be. So it was kind of time to let that go. So yes, I have kind of done that.
Fall behind. Do you find as well that one of the things that I find, I've written these articles and they do pretty well, right, in terms of Google. So there's articles that have come up and people will Google an issue and on a semi-regular basis, ours will come up. But when I've written these articles, a lot of times I'm writing them, like I might have, say, 60% of the knowledge to write the article or 70%. And then I do some research to fill my gaps and then I write it all out.
Yep.
And then I'm like, man, if anyone was to ever stop me and go, hey, what's your opinion on this specific quarter line? It's like, well, I might have written that somewhere, but I can't remember, Yeah. Do you find that, because it'd be like 100,000 times worse for you, because every single week you're on TV giving someone advice for something or how to do this or how to do that, And it might be like, I don't know, 3 years ago they had this thing and they come and, I don't think you did that the right way, or they've got this question. You're like, man, like I've got to pull this out of some recesses in the far corners of my brain. Does that happen at all?
Yeah, absolutely it does. I get asked like everywhere. Like I can't go to Bunnings anymore because I just end up walking people around the aisles to give them stuff and point them in the right direction. It's a bit crazy in that sense. But I remember once I was doing Grand Designs Live. So like it was a stage show. And Kevin McLeod was there, from Grand Designs. And I was
I love Grand Designs.
In awe of him. He's awesome. And he rocked up and he's drinking he would drink like 6 Red Bulls throughout the day, and then he'd have 12 coffees, and like he was just smashing it. And I was like, yeah, Kevin can do it, I can do it. And he was on stage like being charming and stuff, and I like downed a couple of coffees and a Red Bull. I went on stage and had a 45-minute talk that I did in 10 minutes. And then I had to fill time. And I was like, oh no, like what have I done? And I just said to him, I'm really sorry, guys. I'm in awe of Kevin McLeod. He's drinking Red Bull and coffee, and I've done the same thing, and I've just spurted everything out. Like, do you want to just do questions? And then it got the audience on side. They were all kind of laughing. I was like, look up. But one woman asked me, she's like, my apples aren't pollinating properly. And I was like, well, do you have male or female? I'm like trying to work out what's going on. She's like, well, how do you tell if you've got a male flower or a female flower? And I was like, I've dug myself into a hole here. And I was just like, yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I have no idea. You just have to own it. Like sometimes you can work out what the issue is. Like if someone asks you a question, you don't immediately know the answer. I've got enough knowledge of stuff around it that I can piece together something and be like, I'm not exactly sure on that exact species, but I know that, say, this cordyline does this and that cordyline does that. So therefore, I'm kind of guessing if you do the same thing, it'll be all right. Is the way I get around it anyway.
Oh, and then you add in what climate are you in?
Yeah.
Right. And,
what's
do you have like? Yeah, well, I'm in WA, and it's like soil isn't even the right word for it. What's your particles of silicon? Your sand like. But no, it's hard to be, and I don't think it really exists. I don't think the person exists who actually knows everything. I mean, Graham Ross,
he's
maybe.
Pretty close. Yeah,
he is. I actually wonder about him because him and Harry, Dr. Harry, I'm thinking, what sort of, I've got a theory. I've got a conspiracy theory about them. Okay. I think that Channel 7 has found the elixir to life, and they've just given it to those two guys. They ran out, but they only had enough for 2 doses. But they were like, "No, Dr. Harry and Graham, we're going to give it to them because they are doing so well. They keep going. Maybe David Attenborough has some of that too, but I don't know. I'm impressed by their longevity and how sharp. If you ever listen to him on the radio show that he does, he's quick. He's still got it.
Yeah, he does. He's got a photographic memory when it comes to plants. So he says he says as he's getting a bit older, it takes a bit longer to come up with the names, but he can still do it. When he finds a new plant, he'll take a picture of it, and as he takes a picture of it, he says the name, and that sticks with him, and he can. Yeah, if you don't know a plant, he'll know it for sure, and he knows all of the cultivars. It's like cultivars and all the different. It's incredible, man. It's incredible.
I'm terrible at that. It's a hedge.
Yeah,
that's what you call it's a shrub. That's what I call that one. Now, are you good at remembering plants, or do you have to use them quite a few times before you actually get to stick?
No, I'm pretty good with them. There's just too many in this world to ever imagine to say that you're good, but I'm pretty good with most of the stuff that's available in nurseries and in most gardens. Like if it's a bit weird and wonderful, then I don't know it, but the majority of stuff I'm pretty good with.
The vines behind me, when I put them up, right, I was like, should I keep the tags, right? Because it was like, this is an epipremnum, this is a philodendron. I was like, no, I'm going to remember them. There's like 3 of them. I have no idea what they are anymore.
Yeah.
That was like a year ago. And I was like, no, I'll be fine. There's a few of them that I knew, and I was like, I only have to actually remember a couple because I've used these other ones a couple of times. Like, I know what they are. But no,
Just go back to IKEA. They don't grow from there. You can just use an IKEA one and then just go check the tag.
I feel like I can't do that though. Like I can't. Surely, like I can't have a fake plant in my house because it's like admitting defeat. I mean, I'm sure I probably could, but it just feels wrong.
It does. I'm with you on that. Like we are trying to sell our house at the moment, and we're living somewhere else, so it's like styled up, and it's styled with some fake plants because we're not here to water. And it's just like when I come in to water the couple of real ones we got, it just creeps me out. Don't like it.
Do they say this belongs to Charlie Albone?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so your wife would be in the same position as well. She would have to have all the house design. I mean, I'm sure she does. It's probably, I mean, house design is kind of, you do it once and it stays there, unless you're knocking pictures off the wall or, your kids are drawing over your nice paint. But, there's
done inside, right?
You guys must feel so much pressure when you have someone over and the house isn't quite right. Like that's surely you feel like you've broken, you've sinned against the Lord himself.
My wife more so than me, and I think that's because like when an interior is done, it's like you said, it's finished and it doesn't really change much. Like you can buy a new cushion or a lamp or whatever, but once it's done, it's done. With a garden, it's always growing. So I'm like, if someone comes around and the lawn's not mowed or the hedges aren't done or it's not 100%, like I'm fine with it because most people go, well, there's nothing. And I see that the lawn needs mowing, but most people don't. So, yeah.
Have you seen these posts? I'm sure you have, where people are talking about not mowing your lawn for a month to encourage bees and other pollinators?
No.
It's these European
clover.
Yes, it's these European sort of encourage the wildflowers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's just my excuse. Whenever the lawn's a little bit long, no, I'm actually trying to encourage the pollinators.
It's fine.
And in being in a position where he's got the podcast, he would know. It's like I'm just making up rubbish to cover my own lack of organisation.
So I write for the Sunday Times, like in Perth, and have to write every single Sunday, like 52, come up, and I've done it for 3 or 4 years. So I've got to come up with the stories. And like this morning I had to get one in and I was racking my brain, like what on earth am I going to write about? I seem to have written about anything. I'm like, I might write about dead hedges and how they're wonderful for wildlife. It's just like you said, I know 70%, and I just kind of looked up the rest and just plugged out an article on why you shouldn't be cleaning out your rubbish and be turning them into some kind of hedge or boundary for your garden. I'm like, man,
surely there's a certain point where you could just like copy and paste like you did, 18 months ago. No one's going to notice. Change a title.
I take ideas from them and then try and rewrite them because, it does get difficult coming up with something new every week.
Oh, mate, definitely. And 52, like, there's probably 20 fundamental lessons on gardening that cover everything, and then everything else just starts getting real niche.
Yeah. Like dead hedging, for example.
You went to the most niche corner of the entire industry with that one.
I've even done one on designing a garden to be viewed under moonlight. Right. That's pretty niche. That's about as niche as it gets.
That is, you're getting more niche. Maybe like the grade of steel in your edging or something like that. Or
I could do that.
I don't know. I'll come up with some ideas for you. Do you use ChatGPT for some of these ideas? Give me 52 weekly column ideas for articles.
ChatGPT came up with the moonlight gardening one. You can't use ChatGPT to write these things because I tried and I was like, that's just useless. I just can't use any of that. And it's all wrong. Maybe we could do one on like what happens if you're height challenged, gardening for height challenged people.
Oh dear. That's going to get you kicked off. I'll tell you what. I've got a story on that actually. We had a lady who she applied. This is terrible. Anyway, she applied for a job and she had a Cert 3 in horticulture and she was a licensed spray technician. And we had this job for a crew leader. I'm looking at her on paper. She had 4 or 5 years experience, and I was like, oh, this is fantastic, you know. And so I gave her a call, and we did a rough interview. And anyways, she probably should have been a little bit more honest, but she rocked up to her first day, a trial day of work, and she was about my belly button height, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so she had one of those conditions, and she wasn't upfront about it. And the problem is that she couldn't reach the pedals in the car to drive the work vehicle. And it was nothing to do with her work ability, but as in terms of like actual gardening, because, you know, you can mow a lawn and you can cut a hedge and do certain things like that. Most of our stuff is not working at height. But it was a very awkward work day because she was I was out there, it was her, myself, and a sort of a casual worker that we had. And she couldn't shut the box on the ute, and she couldn't do some other things like that. Now, she was lovely, and I felt really sorry, and that's why it was so awkward, because it wasn't like, oh no, she's a jerk anyway. We wouldn't hire her. Yeah. But we had this. I was like, man, it doesn't even matter because you can't drive the work vehicle and stuff. But anyway, that was so. Yes, maybe you should contact her, and she can help you out with that article.
Okay.
But yeah, that was a strange day, that one.
Yeah, it's having staff is a really awkward one, right? Because you have moments like that. You have things that you find completely fine to do, and it might not be a physical thing, a mental thing. And then there's some people that just do it differently, and it's hard managing staff and getting them to think the way you think or do things the way you do, or you even changing to the way other people do things. It can be tricky.
Well, I should say as well, about a year and a half after that, we actually had some contracts that we needed some work on. And I was like, we didn't need her to drive a vehicle there. Like, we had buggies there at these contracts. Yeah. So she could drive her vehicle, which was modified. And I actually called her up and I was like, it's only part-time, it's only 2 or 3 days a week, but would you like that? So she filled that role for us for about maybe 3 or 4 months before she found a full-time role. So, no, we did actually have her work for us for a while, but that specific day where I wasn't aware of her height challenge, that was awkward. That was an awkward one. Talking
about an article coming up. Anyway.
What was that?
Moving on, I won't get into that again.
No, okay. Well, one thing I did want to talk about as well, we talked about briefly. Your wife's on TV with you now. It wasn't always the case, right? Do you guys get competitive on who gets more views? You know, who's got the better segment?
We met doing TV. So I was offered a show, a funded show by Yates called The Party Garden. I think this was like 2 or 3 years into doing Selling Houses. And Juliet was the co-host on that. So that's where we actually met. And then, I continued with Selling Houses. That only had one series because it was dreadful. And then we had a family. So, Juliet's always wanted to get back into TV after doing that. And when the role came up, when Tara left Better Homes, I was like, you should definitely go for it. So we don't get competitive about it. I'm happy because it kind of, we never actually work together. Like, we might do 2 makeovers a year together, but we kind of understand what the other person is going through on the day-to-day because it's a bit of a weird job. Yeah. So it's kind of good in that sense.
Well, I thought it might be the opposite in that, like, so my wife helps me in my business. Yeah. And it's like, you have nothing to talk about for work at the end of the day. How's your work day? It's like, well, your work day is talking about what we do. And it's like, it's not that exciting anymore. It's like, I don't know, what do we talk about? Tottenham Hotspur and how Ange Postecoglou needs some help there. I don't know. Like, what do we get into? Yeah. But so for you guys, I guess if you're doing a lot of different stuff, it probably would be almost like you have different jobs, even though you work for the same company.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we get home and we both slag off Graham Rowe. It's, it's just the way life is.
Me and my wife do that too. He's only been on once. There's so much joy that comes from that, I've got a few people slag off. I saw your MIFGUS when you did MIFGUS, or Melbourne International Flower and Garden Show, and you won it. Congratulations. We'll talk about that in a minute. Yeah. But you did a cut on that for Better Homes and Gardens. And I don't understand how Joel Barnett ended up in that edit. How the heck did you get him? I don't know what the producers were thinking, because surely as soon as he's on the screen, everyone cuts off and no one even hears the end of it where they find out that you actually won.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, stitch up.
No, Joel's good. That's why I can make a joke about it because he won't care.
Yeah, that Melbourne show was it was good. I enjoyed that one, the one we won. It's different when you win a show garden. It makes it worthwhile.
Yeah. Well, so it's a beautiful garden. I'm going to get some photos up of this. Mm-hmm. I think you said, containers. Yeah, 2 containers, beautiful. What do you call them? Vertical gardens. We talked about this when Graham was on. Yeah, but I think you said like 12 months of planning. Yes. Like that's so.
Yeah, look, I've done a few show gardens. I did. Well, the first one I ever did was in Sydney. I did one of the Sydney shows that only went for 2 years. I got a silver in that, and then the next one I did, I went to Chelsea Flower Show straight from that. I kind of blagged my way in. So did that 2 years in a row. Then I went back to Melbourne and got a bronze medal, which gave me the shits because I got 0 feedback from the judges. They were just like, well, I just didn't like it. And I was like, well, it's kind of unacceptable feedback when you've poured all this time and money into it. Like, you need to tell me why you've given me that. And like the head judge was like, I just didn't like it. It's like, okay, cool. So that kind of put me off doing show gardens for a bit. I did one in China, but that was built by them. It's just like submit a design and they build it. And then I went back to Mifkas again and went, okay, well, I'm really going to give this one a crack. I'm going to give it what it deserves and plan it for 12 months and discuss it with the whole team to make sure everyone's across it and knows exactly what they're doing and really focus on it. And at the time I was started my training for Dancing with the Stars, which is probably a waste of time if you've seen Dancing with the Stars. But I was waking. Yeah, man, it was awful. I was getting up at like 5 a.m. I was going to the gym. I was then going to the showground and building the garden, and then going back and living in a share house. And I'd stopped drinking for the process as well, just to try and get some form of clarity. When you're living in a share house with tradies that have been working all day, they just drink all night. So it was a interesting time. But yeah, when you focus on it that much, you really do think about every detail. And like, I kind of learned a lot from it. Like, I was like, okay, if you put in that work and you get a great result and you get a gold medal, you win best in show, you win best plant life, then how do you apply that to your own business, and how do you apply that to every project you take on? And yet not every job is going to get 12 months worth of planning, but you do need to think about every job, like the small details of every job, to elevate it to something amazing. And that's something I do apply to like what I do in my design business for sure.
Yeah. I love this. This is beautiful.
Yeah, it's cool.
I think the thing about, like, I'll talk about this in a minute, but one of the problems with what you do, the best thing about Better Homes and Gardens, right, and what you do is that you show people all these ideas and then how to do them. The worst thing about Better Homes and Gardens is you show all these people these ideas and how to do them. So what ends up happening is everybody has this hodgepodge of, like, 6 months ago I watched this tropical thing, and now I want a tropical garden, and now I watch this cottage garden thing, and so how do I make that blend? Ends up being like a fusion restaurant. But I get that sometimes when I watch your stuff. When I look at this, I'm like, oh, I love the colors, I love the green, I love the shortcut turf. Even the vertical garden here. Is this going to pop up? Can I zoom in? There we go.
Yeah.
I love a good vertical. I got one behind my head.
Yeah, for sure.
But like, I don't know. I've said this before with a few of the garden designers that we've had on, where it's like, I know when I look at something, I know that I like it. I have no idea how to make that. I don't think that's not my talent. I don't have any talent in that area to be like, I'm going to make this out of scratch. I couldn't do that. So I just appreciate whenever I see anything that I'm like, oh yeah, that looks good. Well done.
Yeah, you got to have you got to have one concept and stick to it for a garden. Otherwise, you do end up with a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And the trick is, like, putting it all into it and then being able to remove stuff that you like and know it's for the better of the overall design. That's the trick of getting it looking cohesive and still having cool things in there. Like that turf, like I really wanted, like in show gardens, I hate when people put down turf that you put down in the garden because you see so many lines throughout it. So we spoke to Lawn Solutions and said, look, I want big rolls of TIFF, like sports grass. So that's like 3 rolls of turf. And I think they were, hugely, the weight of them was ridiculous. Like you needed a forklift to get them in. But I wanted those mounds like bean bags. And so that's the Sir Grange zoysia. And I was thinking, well, I'd like the grass to be zoysia as well. So it could maybe all be done as one, and spoke to the guys at Lawn Solutions. They're like, no, it'd be better as TIFF because we can cut it really short, do it as the rolls, and you kind of get that look. I wanted kind of like in the original design, getting back to the point, I had more of those beanbag type things through it. And I was like, well, this would be a really cool space to kind of relax. But I think by pairing it back and just having 2, you get a much better effect.
Yeah. No, I agree. Well, let's get into Jason's garden down there. But even like, having the kitchen there, where's the see-through container? You can look through it to the next one.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that my business mind goes to, like, how is this financially justifiable? I love the entire show. Like, I just don't get how you put all this time in. Because for those who don't know, we have talked about it a few times with Joel Barnett and people like that who have done this a few times, this is built. Here's a good angle for it. This is ground level here, people. This is ground level. All this, this is all shown in the video you did. So you can watch this on the internet when you did the Better Homes and Gardens show. This is all timber built up, and you make it in 3 or 4 days or something like that. You might tell me more. It's up for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And then you take it down.
Built in 9 days. I mean, things like Chelsea are different because you're allowed to dig in the ground, but Melbourne's on like a heritage site. So you can't dig, you can't put a stake in the ground. Like you have to engineer it so it's all above the ground. Like the one I did in 2017, I had 2 meter by 1 meter stone panels that were 75 mil thick, and I'd cut them to make these window frames and had them above everyone's head. Like I had like 6 or 9 of them to make the roof, and like to engineer that and not have any footings was pretty incredible feat. And just so when someone goes, I just didn't like it, it's like what? Anyway,
what year was that? Did you say 2017?
2017.
I'll Google this on screen.
But yeah, it's like they cost a lot of money. I'm in a very lucky position that if I call people up and say, hey guys, do you want some social media coverage? It's most likely going to be on Better Homes and Gardens. Can I just borrow this staircase, for example, is a great example for the show on the off chance, and I'll send you the pictures and I'll do whatever you want on social media. You tend to get that for free, right? So I'm very lucky in that sense. But that garden did cost me a hell of a lot of money.
The 2017 or the 2023?
All of them have. Yeah. The 23 one in particular.
Yeah. So because you got sponsors, right?
Yes.
And they might supply, and this is pretty common across, the different people who do it. They might go, well, we'll lend you some plants, give them back, we'll, help you out with some of the costs and stuff. But man, these things, what happens with the sea containers, and what happens with the whole? Basically, you build a whole kitchen. Did anybody cook anything on that kitchen? Like, did it function?
So there was a barbecue on one of them as a rooftop, and we used that barbecue for like making breakfast. The grill that you see is just made of timber, so you can't cook on it. Like it's just for show. One of the containers was sold. The other one actually went back to Mifkas the next year, and I did another like a stand for a show out of it. But I mean, you get sponsorships for it. The plants tend to go back, but you have to buy the small plants because they don't survive the show, or they're not sellable after the show. You try and sell as much as you can. A lot goes. They try and recycle a lot of it. Like anything that can be, like all the timber that can be mulched gets mulched. You have to take all the nails out of it, but like it's a lot of work. Like you have to be committed to it. But the bloody problem with them is when you do one, you get addicted to the doing of them. Like, it's not just the show; it's the camaraderie of the build and like the excitement of it all that is the addictive part. And then the show comes along. Like, some people say it's nice, some people say, "Oh, I hate it. I'd never have that." And you learn to listen to what everyone's saying and take what you want out of it. But it's kind of the camaraderie which is irreplaceable and highly addictive.
So when you, because this is kind of, I don't want to say it's a Ponzi scheme, but it's almost like that, where with the garden show, they hook you in legitimately without any illegal activity whatsoever. But then it's like, all these businesses, they get competitive, and it's like, like this camaraderie thing. I can imagine how it's hard to give that up. But then again, your wife might look at your bank balance and go, "No,
your bank manager says you have to give this up. This is not crack cocaine. You can give it up easily."
Yes, and this is why Charlie's now selling his houses. He's funding his 2025 Miska's run, $6 million in 4 days.
Yeah,
man, I don't know. I don't even want to know exactly what the total cost to do the entire show from all the businesses that put everything in. It would be nuts.
Yeah, it would be pretty high. A big expense for us was because I used a lot of my guys. We had to either drive down or fly down, and then accommodation. And it's always around F1 weekend, so accommodation's through the roof.
Oh yes, yeah.
So great. That's where a lot of our expense goes. Like, I think I'd do it very differently if I was going to do another one. I'd probably use a Melbourne-based landscaper and just have a select few people doing the finishing touches and planting, and do it that way. Is a much more sensible way of doing it, but that's not how I've done it in the past.
Call Joel Barnett.
Yeah, or Joel.
CA. Yes. Did you do the I haven't watched this. I'm sorry, Ash, but you had Ashley James on Ben. Was that with you, or is that with someone else?
That was with Melissa. Yeah, it wasn't with me.
Yeah. No.
But I think they went to his house in the middle of winter and spoke about flowers, and he's like, "I don't have any flowers in the middle of winter." So it was like a real smoke and mirrors type segment.
Yeah. He's we've had Ash on. I think he's got the record for the longest. No, he does. He's got the record for the longest episode we've ever done. So I don't know. That was 3 hours. Okay. I don't know how Melissa went, keeping it short. I mean, I guess because I'm not there, that's half your problem gone. But no, he's another one in that area that we've had on, and there's plenty of good people that can do
there's
it.
Some amazing people doing amazing things in Australia. A lot of passionate people, a lot of people that are just interested in one or two things, and they go down their own niche rabbit hole. And I think that's amazing. I love talking to those people. Speaking to a guy, we did a garden on the Central Coast. He's like a bromeliad grower. He was in this colorful flowery shirt, and then he put on a cowboy hat, but perched it off to the side. It's you're definitely going to wear that on camera.
I don't have that confidence.
And he's like, "No, I just, because of the sun." I'm like, "Oh yeah, obviously for the sun." But he just grows bromeliads and aloes, and his garden was just amazing. Yeah, it's so cool being able to meet people like that and get to tell their story, which is cool.
Yeah, those plants, bromeliads, some of the textures in the leaves and the colors and what you get, amazing plants. Yeah. Not that great if your kid's going to kick a soccer ball into it, but
No, but it's amazing. You get an imperial bromeliad and you look at it and you think, "Oh, that definitely would go in the shade," and you're like, "No, that needs full baking hot sun." It's just they kind of look so out of place that kind of adds to their appeal, I guess.
Yeah. Back to Mifkus a little bit here. So, do you feel like? So, will you do it again? And if you did do it again, would you go, having won it, do you feel like it releases you a little bit to go a little bit more crazy, a little bit let's push some boundaries here? Or is there a kind of addiction to the success, so you're going to play it a little bit more common sense?
I felt maybe bringing in 2 shipping containers and having a rooftop garden that no one could actually go onto and designing it it was pushing it enough.
No, yeah, I was pushing boundaries.
There's definitely a pressure to do well again. I mean, a best in show is not something you should ever really kind of go for, because it's personal opinion really, and I think that is the problem with Mifkas. I can talk about that because it shits me a bit, but I mean, you want to do well, but I really think with Australian garden shows, like in the UK, right? And I'm not saying it's perfect, but you fill out a questionnaire, like a 3-page questionnaire on what you're trying to achieve, and if you get certain points, and the person with the most points wins. There's no, oh, I just like the look of it, right? It's a points thing, and that needs to be done. And the horticulture at Mifkas is not of the same standard. Like, so if I was told I got a silver gilt medal, not a gold medal, because in my brief it said the garden is enclosed by a hedge and your hedge doesn't have enough leaves on it because you've got like an espaliered hedge, so people can see it. So you haven't hit the brief. I'm like, okay, I understand that. And they're like, and when it comes to horticulture, you need to think, you've planted this tree here, you've given us a certain aspect. We're going to know where the sun travels because you've told us all the information. And the plants in the shade have to be able to handle 2 hours less shade than plants on the other side. You can't just chuck a, like, this is sun, this is shade together. And that's cool. Like, that is what it should be. You should be held responsible for what you're doing, because people are going to look at that and go, I could do that. And you need to teach people the right thing. And that's where Mifkas gets it wrong, I think. And like I said, you can't have personal opinion in it. Like, you just can't, because what I like is not what someone else likes, but somebody else will also like what that other thing is, So that's just my small rant.
Is there any of these shows that have like a democratic element to it, where there's votes, a bit like Triple J Hottest 100 or something?
Well, they all do like a viewer's favorite. So, if you go to the show, you can vote on what's your favorite. There's that. To go back to the way they do it in UK and Europe, like they do that point system, but to be a judge, you have to go through a process to become a judge. You can't just be like, I just couldn't be a judge like I could be here in Australia. You have to like go through an adjudication, and then you have to watch like 3 years of judges judging without saying a word before you're even allowed to become a judge. Do you know how, like, what's expected of you? Like, it's serious shit over there. And here they're like, oh, we'll just get that guy who likes to build stuff to judge it. Oh, I didn't like it. Okay, cool. And like when people invest as much money and time as they do into these things, I think it's only right that they get that. They should get that level of respect in the judging. But yeah, I mean, I'm going back again this year, not to do a judged one. I'm doing something for Challenger Investments again, but because I get my addiction fixed there. I get to scratch the itch without being judged, so I get to go and build stuff. So I will be back. And to do another show again, yeah, I'd love to, but I just need some money this time to do it, like a proper sponsorship.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're on the TV enough. Surely somebody's gonna chip in something at some point.
It's hard when a show's only open for 5 days. You go, can I have $150,000, please, for a show that's open for 5 days?
Yeah, I can see why that's a problem.
Yeah. That's why Chelsea's even harder, because it's like, can I have? Because the first one, I spent $400,000 on the show garden.
What?
Right? Yeah,
Jeez.
Because you have to have flights, you have to have accommodation, you have to have a team, you have to have materials, you have to buy all the plants because no one will give them to you because they don't know who you are. You're expected to spend £100,000 on plants alone to go to the Chelsea Flower Show. And then you have to say, okay, can I have that money? And here's a show on the other side of the world, and it's open for 5 days. And at the end, it all just gets crumpled into a heap and disappears. It's not an easy sell.
Crazy. No, it's not. I mean, I can see why you did Dancing with the Stars. You've got to get the income to do.
I have to. I'm poor. I had to don a tutu and show that I have zero rhythm.
You didn't. Yeah, I mean, this is all the consequences of your own actions. This is. There's
a moment on that show, right? It's the most terrifying thing because you train so much for it, and you're like, okay, I can kind of do this, but then you stand in the auditorium and there's all these people staring at you. Most of them because like it's a small auditorium, there's family and friends, and there's a countdown that goes 4, 3, 2, 1, and if you don't go on one, your timing's all off. And I got the worst stage fright and just like completely freaked out. And as you're doing it, you're going, this is not going to plan. And it was like, do you just sit down? I remember thinking, are you just going to sit down? Because you're making a fool of yourself. You're not doing well. Like, if you sit down, maybe they'll give you another go. And at that point, I was supposed to do a lift, and I like dropped to the dancer, and I was like, oh no, you need to concentrate. And then I'm like, oh, but what am I doing? Hang on a sec. And it was just like, oh my gosh. And I'm in like a salmon pink suit with like a fluoro yellow leopard print singlet on. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what has my life come to? Like, stop doing show gardens. You don't need the money that much.
Oh dear. That's terrifying. It's like my toddler when I say, it's like, can I have a bicky? No, you can't have a bicky. Just sit on the floor. Crossed.
That's what I felt like doing.
I'm not doing this dance anymore.
Had enough of this jive.
Oh dear, man! I couldn't imagine. I couldn't do it. I did dancing lessons for maybe 5 or 6 weeks before my wedding, so that my wedding dance was an actual dance and not just standing around hoping for the song to end. And so you think I would be okay because my grandma, she is actually a dancer, and it was her 80th birthday. It's her 80th birthday tomorrow, as we're recording this. But her birthday party was a week and a half ago on the weekend, and she did a dance for her at 80 years old. And amazing. It's like, she's still got it. So we went to her and we're like, Grandma, and so she was there and her dance instructor, and anyways, just none of those genes I think got passed down. None of that side of it got there. So no, I know I couldn't. Not that anyone's ever got an offer, right? Like that would never happen to start with. But even if some sort of catastrophe happened where they needed someone, as boring as I am, I still would say no. It doesn't matter how much money there is,
I don't know why I said I think like I really wanted to show my kids you can do something different and don't worry about being bad at it. And I succeeded at that. Like, because they were there for the first night and I was mortified. I was like, guys, see, you can fail and you can still have fun. But I had to like go back the next week and do it again. And that's really hard. And I'm like, that was a good lesson to show my kids. You just got to sometimes suck it up and do it. Like the thought of going back out there again. And the second dance, oh my gosh, it wasn't much better than the first one. But they like flooded the stage with dry ice, smoke. And I was supposed to walk down these stairs and I couldn't see the stairs. So I'm like at the top of the stairs going, where the fuck are the stairs gone? So again, this is not going to plan. Oh my God. Yeah, I had PTSD after that show for ages.
Mate, you congratulations. You didn't come last. I think you came second last. Is that right?
Only because of an injury, though. Like, I was last. Let's be real about it. I was the worst dancer there, for sure. Yeah.
But you know what? Like, we're having fun talking about it. It's
a story. It's a story to tell.
Another story which I've got to bring up. I heard you once say that when you're doing the Chelsea Flower and Garden Show, as you spent all the money on the plants, you needed to save some money on accommodation. And why don't you tell the story?
Yeah, okay. So like I said, it costs a hell of a lot of money to do these show gardens. And when you're over there, so you're over there for a month, right? And I had a team of, I don't know, maybe 12 or 15 guys there. And you got to put them all up in accommodation. Like, I was lucky that the majority of them worked for free for the experience, but you still have to pay for the flights. You still have to pay for the accommodation. And I got onto a broker who finds apartments and stuff. And he was like, I can find you 15 beds in this apartment block. There'll be separate rooms and all that stuff. Some of you might have to share like an apartment, like a 2-bedroom apartment. So that's fine. Kind of put it into the budget. It worked, and like it was walking distance to the show, which is great. And we're like when the Australians go over in the past through Fleming's, and I kind of kept it alive, as we all had the same uniform on, all had the same high vis on. It's kind of like a camaraderie thing again. And we're walking through Chelsea, and we're stopping at this this petrol station and just buying like bottles of water and snacks and stuff like that. And this old bloke comes up to me and he goes like, what are you guys all doing? Like all dressed the same. I said, oh, we're building a garden that shows a flower show. We've come from Australia and, that's what we're doing. He's like, and you're staying where? And I was like, oh, just in that building behind us there. He goes, why on earth would you stay in a brothel? And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, the top 3 floors of that building, they're all a brothel. And I was like, oh, because it's cheap, I guess. A couple of the boys there is pricked up and were like, oh, I didn't know.
Yeah. So, and I'm guessing you weren't in the top 3 floors, but I don't know. Some of the guys, after you didn't win, they might have head up there. I don't
know. Yeah. I think a couple of them did.
No comment. Not throwing anyone under the bus.
No, not throwing anyone under the bus. But yes.
Yeah, I can imagine how coming home and explaining that to the wife would have been slightly more difficult than if it was just a normal hotel.
She came out to see it, and I was like, I'm just warning you something here. This accommodation is not flash, and it's a brothel. She's like, what? I'm like, yeah, like, so I've been told.
Matt, when I was when we did Makers Month, we flew over to Melbourne to film most of these episodes, and I was filming with there's a couple of people over here that we filmed with first, and we looked on the map, and because most of these brands are in industrial areas, right? Most of the hotels are near the city or tourist attractions, right? There wasn't that many options sort of central to what we wanted. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, we're looking in sort of Dandenong South and those places, and there was a couple of places, and there was this place called Budget Ibis.
Oh, yeah.
And it's me and my brother, and he was doing the filming. So we want separate rooms, and I'm like, well, I could get a place for roughly the same price that's 1 apartment, 2 different rooms, or I can get 2 completely different apartments, 2 completely different bathrooms. I was like, let's do that. I don't want to get too sick of my brother,
Mm-hmm.
and he too sick of me. So I booked this place, and then I'm filming with the guy for Gianni Ferrari, and he was like, oh, so where are you staying? I was like, oh, just a place in Dandenong South. And he was like, it's not Budget Ibis, is it? And I was like, it is Budget Ibis. And he goes, it's the worst hotel I've ever stayed. I walked in, saw my room, turned around, walked out again, and paid for something else on top of paying for that to not stay there.
Yeah.
And Ian's with me, and we were like, oh dear, like, what is this place? And he was like, I think it's Hooker Central, and like really shot it down. And so Ethan and I, we were like, so anyway, we rocked up, and I was like, look, it's not great, but I don't see any druggies. I don't see any hookers, right? Yeah. Like, it's just the cheapest stuff you've imagined. And look, the cheapest place I've ever stayed, I cycled through Africa through Tanzania. So I say I cycled through Africa sound like it was a bigger trip than I was, but I spent a week and a half cycling through Tanzania for charity. And so we stayed in a hotel that was, hotel's an elaborate word. It was $6 a night.
Mm-hmm.
And I got food poisoning, was hospitalized. Mate, there was stains on the bed. Yeah. No, there were stains on the beds. There wasn't a toilet. It was one of those squatty potties.
Nice.
Yeah, no toilet paper. So, use your imagination. It was not the best place I've ever stayed. But $6 a night. So you got to say, like, it's a fair price. Can't complain on that.
Yeah,
$6 US.
Oh, US. Oh, God, no.
Oh, yeah.
We stayed in some horrible places in selling houses. Like one place, I pulled back the sheets and like the bed obviously hadn't been changed because it was covered in sand and pubes. And I was like, oh. And it's like you get there.
Pubes?
Like there was all pube hair all over it. Like it's obviously someone really hairy had been in there. And like
they'd gone to the beach.
And then I was like, oh, for fuck's sake. And it was like 11:30 at night when we got there. So I had to just like sleep on the couch next to it. And I'm like, I don't know if this is any better or worse than pube bed. Like, what do you do? Next morning, I was like, just to let you know, the room I stayed in is full of pubes and sand. He's like, oh, no, we definitely cleaned it. I'm like, you definitely did not. Like, we had to go back and do the makeover. And I'm like, I'm not staying at that place. And the guy got really upset and really offended. I'm like, mate, your bed is filled with sand and pubes. Like, of course, I'm not going to want to sleep in that. Like, what? Anyway. Yeah, I stayed in some shit places.
I think I wanted to get onto this. There's so many things to talk about, but TV is not necessarily as glamorous as what people think it is, because it's expensive to just film stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And we've had enough people on the show who have done stuff with TV that I've started to realize that, like, you know, it may not be actually as glamorous or desirable a job. Not that it's undesirable, but it's not what everybody thinks it is, right? So is there any moments like that where you've just gone, what the heck is going on, you know, beyond pubes in a bed?
Yeah, like people think the traveling around and stuff is nice, but when I was doing Selling Houses, I was traveling so much that I was platinum with Qantas and Virgin at the same time. Like, that's a lot of flying, right? And that's basically just trying to get through the airport as quickly as you can. I mean, the good thing with that is you get decent lounge access when you're platinum with both. So you were eating in the airport, you were traveling, and it was just like, it's a whirlwind, and it's not particularly nice, but people think it's glamorous, like you're traveling to these places, but really you're traveling to a job site and then you're traveling back to a pretty average hotel. You're not on holiday viewing these places. So it is like, it's definitely not as glamorous as people think, but it is still a great job. Like, I still love doing it. Like, I'm lucky to do it. I feel very lucky to do it, even though, you know, sometimes with the travel it can be a bit much.
Do you ever get a point with Better Homes where you know, they're like 3, 2, 1, about to film, and you're just like, how the heck did this happen? Like, what happened to my life that I'm in? And it's like this surreal moment.
Yeah, well, I was lucky enough to go to Alaska with the show. They're like, some cruise ship wanted to sponsor it, and I'm like, yeah, like, I probably wouldn't normally go on a cruise ship, but Alaska is somewhere I'd love to go, and I think that's the best way to see it. So, and we sat out on like our room had a balcony. I was looking out. It was a travel day, so the boat was just like full clip up from Vancouver up to Alaska. And I looked out at the water, and there would have been a pod of dolphins that were like, not kidding, like maybe 500 of them, and they were after something in the water. They were like missiles going through the water, just pegging it. It was like this white water thing. And I was just like, man, this is crazy. Like, I'm getting paid to see this. This is wild. And like, then we got to see black bears in the wild eating salmon, like catching them out of the river and stuff like that. And whales that did all this bubble feeding and stuff like that. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like, how did this ever happen from that moment where my ex-girlfriend said, you're never going to put in a tape, and if you do, you'll be shit at it, to me standing on a boat in Alaska going, this is crazy. I mean, it's crazy. It's wild.
Thanks, ex-girlfriend. What a
exactly. Yeah, thank you for the motivation. Thank you.
Yeah, gee, man. And what looking back on it, I asked Graham this question as well. What is the most meaningful episode you've shot, or the one that really stands out to you as being like, oh, this actually, you know, it wasn't just educational, it was a little bit more than that?
Whenever we do anything like Anzac Day, we did a story with a bloke out west where we just did up his garden and put in some roses for him. And I started talking to another friend about it, and he's like, oh yeah, I know Reg. I know the guy who wrote his book, because he's like got this amazing tale of being a war veteran. And you kind of realize, like, when you do something like that, you're like, yeah, it's great that you're on TV talking about plants, but then there's people that have these insane lives that have been to war and done all this stuff for their country, and now they need a makeover just to put a bit of happiness in their life with roses. And you're just like, this is just wild. Like, you remember stuff like that, you know?
Yeah.
They're good ones. You feel like you want to help those people out. There's some that you go to and you're just like, more so on Selling Houses than Better Homes, where you'd be doing the work and you're like, I know they're not going to care for this. I know that, like, because of what you turn up to, like, they're obviously not taking care of it now. Why are you going to all of a sudden? There are people that do, but then I drive past certain houses and I'm like, it's all dead, like, within 3 weeks, because they don't water anything. You're like, well, what was the point in that, you know? So yeah, you remember both ends of the spectrum.
Do you ever have a memory pop up, or a show is recommended in your YouTube algorithm, or Better Homes as a highlight or something in the past? You're like, I've completely forgotten that I filmed that. Like,
oh yeah, all the time. Like, where was that? yeah, all the time.
Yeah. Have you ever listened back to something that you've said and like disagreed with yourself? Like, I wouldn't do it that way anymore. Like, I wouldn't design it that way, or that advice I would probably change a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't really sit there and watch myself too much, to be honest with you. But look, things change, don't they? Like I said, I've been doing this for quite a while now. So definitely my opinions have changed. My design style's changed. So why wouldn't my opinions on that change?
Yeah.
That's part of it.
What are you more inspired by now? What has changed? What do you get more excited about now with design and plants and maybe even plant choice? Where are you going with your thinking?
Look, I am still a great lover of flowers, and I think that's maybe because of when I was working in the UK. There's a huge movement in landscaping in Australia towards succulents and architectural plants and stuff like that, which I also think are cool. I have a lot of those in my garden, but I like the combination of that with a bit more traditional flowers and stuff like that. I think they can go really well together, and that kind of excites me. I think sometimes if you go too heavy on the architectural stuff, it can look nice, but I'd get bored with it too quickly. So I like to bring in softer stuff, grasses and flowering stuff to kind of break it up. And that's kind of where I'm going now. I went through a bit more of a formal stage, and I don't mind formality, but I have done a bit of formal stuff. And then a long time ago, I was into quite a lot of rustic, using a lot of rustic sleepers and stuff like that. But it depends on the garden and who's using it, really. I can appreciate every style of garden for sure. I might not design it myself, but I can appreciate it.
So you're renovating a house right now, or you're about to buy a house? Is that the situation?
We are selling a house in Sydney, and we have bought somewhere else that we are renovating. So I'm living with my in-laws. Ugh.
Sounds exciting. I've done that too. So when you're looking at a blank canvas, which is probably something you've already been doing, right? For Charlie, not for a client.
Mm-hmm.
Are there 2, 3, 4 plants that are non-negotiables outside of lawn? Because lawn's probably one of those. But where you're like, I'm making these work. I love these so much that these are going to be in there no matter what.
No, not really. It depends on. The garden that is attached to the house that we're selling. It won one of the Landscape Association awards under best design under 200 square meters. That was kind of based around a pool and a cabana, and the look that me and my wife wanted for the house. The plants kind of suited that. The new house is slightly different. It's a bit more of a contemporary Spanish kind of house. So the garden's going to be different. Again, I'm going to bring in some hydrangeas and stuff like that, which I just don't like. I like hydrangeas a lot. Had them at the farm, but they just didn't suit this garden, so I didn't have them. And there wasn't really a spot that they would perform well in. I think there's no point putting a plant in if it's not going to perform to its absolute best. You've got to get the right plant in the right spot, because that's what will make it look its best and will elevate a garden from being quite nice to pretty special. I had Andrew Winter around actually to this garden a year or so ago, and he's like, "What's that plant at the back?" I'm like, "Oh, it's just the giant elephant ears." And I've got it in the perfect spot, and it's over 6 foot tall, huge. Absolutely massive. It's perfectly sheltered, not one leaf out of place, deep green. He's like, "Oh, I've got something similar to that around my pool." I got him to look it up. I'm like, "That's the exact same plant." He's like, "Well, why doesn't mine look like that?" I'm like, "Well, you're in the Gold Coast. You probably did fuck all to the soil, and you planted them in full sun. That's why they're yellow and shitty and small. There's no point having it unless it's going to look its best. It's what really elevates a garden design." So,
yeah. Wind on those plants as well is killer. That's what we get a lot. So we're very close to the coast, and it's very windy here. Mm-hmm. And because it's close to the coast, people are like, "Oh, give me these tropical coastal vibes," and all the plants have ripped leaves, and they can't handle. It's the conditions here are just they're not tropical. Yeah. They're dry. There's heat in tropics, but there's no humidity. It's super windy. There's almost no protection, and people want these sort of half shade plants in the full baking WA sun. Doesn't work, No.
Yeah, and that's I think that's as a designer, you have to be able to tell people you just can't do it. You're not going to have a nice looking garden if you go down that path, but you can have a nice looking garden if you do it like this. And if they're like, no, I definitely want it, you have to be able to go, okay, well, I can't give that to you. I can give you a nice layout and stuff like that, but I'm not going to have anything to do with the plants because it's just not going to work. but turning
I
down
heard you have,
time.
yeah. Especially when you've got those show gardens, you've got to fund. You got to take every single dollar you got. Yeah, yeah. The kids are not getting their education. Like, we're downgrading that. Everything's happening just to get a show garden going forward.
Yeah.
I did want to ask you this about as well. I heard that you have a train, or you had a train.
I had a monorail carriage. Yeah.
Right. Is this in the farm or the smaller property?
This was at the farm. So I was doing a job for a client, and he was an interesting character. He he saw on the news, like when the train was being dismantled, they were selling it off for scrap, and some guy had bought some and wanted to just sell them on to just like keep the dream alive of the monorail. Why, I don't know, because it's like the ugliest carriages in the world. But he's like, he called me. He's like, I bought a monorail carriage. I'm like, okay, I bought you one too. I'm like, okay, I don't really need one. He's like, if you can pay for the transport, I'll just send it up to your farm. I'm like, okay. So it sat in the field for like years, rotting away, filling with spiders and snakes. And his one was pretty cool. So we turned his into like a Scotch drinking den. So like you press a button and the doors open, and then we tiled the floor and like got a car upholsterer to do like leather studded seats, and there was a fridge in there and all this like glassware for scotch and stuff. And he would go down with his mates and drink scotch in his monorail. Kind of cool. Much cooler than my monorail, which just sat there looking rubbish until my wife said, I've had enough of it. You need to do something with it. So then I dragged it round to another part of the garden and basically turned it into a shed. So it was like a glamorous fiberglass shed filled with fertilizer and spiders. So not as exciting as a Scotch drinking den.
No, not as exciting. But I had this idea. I was. Do you ever go on auction websites?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very foolish decision because you end up being tempted by things that you don't need.
Yeah.
But I was looking for trailers or things that were relevant to my business, and there was a bunch of Transperth buses being sold. Okay. Right, so X buses, right. And the color scheme at the time was like a silver color with green stickers on it, and all those green stickers had been pulled off. It was just silver, and the kilometers on, there's like 1,000,000+ kilometers on these machines, right? But some of them, this is pre-COVID, some of them were like going for like $3,000-$4,000.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, bro, if I had the space, yeah. I know a bus driver. A Transperth bus driver, actually. I'd call him up and I'd be like, mate, I'm going to buy this thing. Can you just drive it to my property if I had a property? And I'm like, I'm going to convert that into something cool because you don't like. I'm not going to make it run anymore. I'm just going to put it on some brackets or whatever to hold it up, and you could have, put some curtains on there, and you've got like a
guest
place
accommodation
for your family to. Or you could turn it into like a kid's room or whatever, and it was like $3-4 grand. Yeah. And these, and they
surely you could sell that. You could sell it for scrap for more than $3 or $4 grand.
Yeah, actually, I think Selling Houses with Dennis, they did an episode on a bus, actually, where they renovated a bus.
We did a houseboat that we sank on Selling Houses.
You sank it.
Pretty much, yeah.
What?
So this houseboat was worth about $80,000, like if it was in like amazing condition, and we spent about $80,000 on it.
Oh,
so it was just like it was making a show for the sake of making a show, and like we had a build manager, and I was like, so I want to do some like bench seating around here and here up the top, and we'll put some carpets in and stuff. And he's like, okay, we don't really have any budget to put in like lightweight proper benches. We're just going to build them out of timber. I'm like, okay. And Shayna inside was like, I want to do like a marble bench top and like make it like a proper house and stuff. And we just put so much stuff into it that when it went in the water, it just started slowly sinking. And the woman had a chainsaw and she just chopped up all the furniture and was throwing it overboard. It was so funny. They didn't show that part in the show. But,
I was going to say, is that on camera?
Yeah. So...
I
don't know if she ever sold that, but yeah, that was TV for the sake of TV.
She couldn't. It was at the bottom of the river. Oh dear.
Yeah.
That's some bad planning there.
It wasn't.
I haven't heard that one before.
Mm.
No, you got to make the show must go on. The show must go on.
You're doing a houseboat. You're doing a houseboat.
Is there anything that Graham Rowe gives you where you're like, mate, what is this? What are we filming? Like, this is the most ridiculous idea ever.
He did one, like, I'm not big on like crafty things, and he was like, okay, so we're going to make like a pot stand, and we're going to do it out of copper pipe, and we're going to like bend it into a cactus shape. And I was like, oh, really? Like, okay, no, we'll just do it. And he was like, it'll be really easy. We'll make it look super simple. And it took him like 4 days to get it right. Like, he couldn't get the curves right. And it was like he was pulling his hair out about it. And here I am trying to show how easy it is on TV. I'm like, mate, it just looks like, who would do this? It looks shit. He's like, everyone, people will love it. It'll be great. I'm like, okay, doesn't this look great? Like, going on camera. And he's like, you didn't like that, did you? And I was like, I hated it. I hated doing it. But yeah, that was the one I teased him about all the time. We got copper cactus. Copper cactus. We got a pretty similar aesthetic, especially with plants. So I can kind of trust him on that. So, we bounce ideas off each other for most things and locations and what can be done and that kind of stuff, because I can't do it all. So he's great to be there, and like, we get on really well. So that kind of helps as well.
Yeah. And he actually he's very knowledgeable.
He is.
Yeah. So, I mean, I asked him as well, like, and he didn't throw you under the bus, right? I doubt that you've listened to the entire 2 hours and 45 minutes or whatever.
I have not. No, I haven't.
But I said to him, I was like, is there any point where like Charlie's on camera and you're just like, mate, this guy's got no clue what he's talking about. He's having to fumble his way through this. And he was like, no, they actually do know their stuff. And I was like, I gave him the opportunity to throw you under the bus. And he didn't, So
that's nice of him. Yeah, he does.
Well, mate, we're almost at an hour and a half, and you've got to pick your children up at some stage.
I actually do go from school, yeah.
Yeah, and you've been neglecting them too much with the Shogun, so you've actually got to compensate by actually, I guess you have to kind of love them. It's sort of difficult sometimes. But, mate, so is there anything else exciting other than the show gardens that's coming up? Is there any episodes on Better Homes and Gardens that you filmed that you're looking for, that might not have come out yet, that you're excited about coming out?
Yeah. There's one, a garden that's like literally around the corner from me, called Salty and Barefoot. And it's like a small house that they renovated with 3 kind of separate gardens. The front garden is just a path and full of plants and like looks super cool. The internal courtyard has this great little pool that's like more of a tropical thing, and then like a family back garden, and that's just a really nice garden. So I'm quite looking forward to that one coming out. And then I'm heading to Uluru in a couple of weeks to ride a camel and have a look at that, which should be fun. Like, that's another one of those things like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. How did that happen? But that's fine. Cool.
Well, I was going to say, like, you're going to Uluru, to landscape around it? Like, we're going to put some elephant here.
Well, make sure you work as well to establish them.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know where you're getting the water from, unless you've got a really good rain dance, which you clearly don't, because otherwise we would have seen on Dancing with the Stars.
Okay, that's enough.
Anyways, thanks for coming on. We'll look out for the Uluru episode with how to landscape Uluru. No, some is it a holiday thing again, or is it a?
I'm not sure why I'm going there, but I think I'm going to look at Bush Tucker, and I'm going with Clarissa, who's one of the chefs on the show, and she'll be doing a bit of cooking, and I think I'll get to eat it, enjoy all the tourist stuff, so it should be good.
Well, I mean, it sounds like a tough life. I'm very jealous. But thanks for coming on. And anyways, actually, no, there was one more thing I wanted to tell you very briefly. Please make your own podcast longer. I've got to say, I enjoy the pod. I know it's not really part of your choice, but the longer the episode, I think they're good. That's what podcasts are for, mate. So
yeah. I know. It's we generally talk for like an hour, and they cut it down to half an hour when we do it. But we have some awesome guests on there, and some really interesting people. It's kind of I don't know why we keep it so short, but we normally knock out like two or three in a day. So I think if I was to do 2 or 3 in a day, my mind would be mush if I did them longer. But yeah, no, I'll try to.
I once did 4 in a day, and that's not happening again. That was 4 1.5 hour episodes, but I didn't have to record anymore for a month. So there you go.
Time off.
There you go. Well, thank you so much for coming on, mate. And everybody else, we'll see you in the next podcast.
See ya.